Good evening. Good evening. How are we? Welcome along, Inspire and Be Inspired. My name is Andy Ward, and it is time for another weekly motivational conversation and occasional life hacks. If it is your first time joining me, whether live or picking up the recording from seeing previous episodes, it's great to have you along. Now, to everybody with us live, I always send out an invitation for you to leave a comment, let me know you're watching. Feel free to ask any questions or reply to anything that myself and my guests discuss this evening. And the same goes for you coming back and watching the recording. I know it's not always convenient for people to watch live, but we do invite you to leave anything that you believe will add to the conversation. Tuesday the 21st of June, my guest this evening comes all the way from Leeds, and it continues in discussions about the birth of the house music scene in the UK and how it progressed from the soul, funk, boogie and sound system era. Without further ado, I go over and I say welcome along to Malcolm WeLove. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, good evening, Andy. How you doing, mate?
Good. Thank you for being here. Now, I know you have watched a few of these, so you're fully aware of exactly what's going down. Before we kick off, I guess I have to ask the WeLove. Tell me about that.
So, originally, back in the day, when I started on WYBC radio, which is when I first needed to have a DJ name, I was actually called DJ ML, spelled EMELLE, Malcolm Lewis, yeah? But then a bike company came out with some real crap bike with a similar spelling, and it just knocked it off. Anyway, years later, like 20 years after that, maybe 15 years, I was down in London, and we had a party in Shepherd's Bush in the toilet, literally in the toilet in the centre of that little green that's in Shepherd's Bush itself, which was a place called Ginglick. It was a refurbed underground toilet. And we were playing any music. I'd been inspired by all of that West London thing where it was any genre. Mm-hmm. And so we put a party on, and it was called We Love Music. When I came back to Leeds, back in 2009, I had a reason to need a DJ name again. I don't really spend much time with admin, as you know. It was like, what could I think of? And I'm a fan of Questlove. And so it was like, okay, we'll just go with that.
So it's stuck. Okay. Well, we've got slightly ahead of ourselves. Let me reel you back in. I should begin by saying a very brief introduction, really. We are currently riding high off the back of a successful party that you had up in Leeds that we will eventually get to talk about. And you are enjoying some great success with a record that you've got out at the moment with the At Jazz Recording Company. So again, we will get to talk about that. Good evening to Michelle. Good evening to Gary. Good evening to everybody else that's watching live. Thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting. Okay, so let's begin from the beginning. I always say to my friends that I'm talking to, we're clearly not going to get a life story from you in this short amount of time that we're going to be speaking, but we'll try and capture some of the more important parts. And I feel some of the most important parts will be for you to paint the picture of life in Leeds growing up, I believe, in the 70s. What year were you born?
Yeah, I'm 50. I'm born 71. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I grew up in Leeds. Technically, it's Hare Hills, which is just next to Chapeltown, just an area just outside of the city centre where Chapeltown is, the black community in Leeds. And I grew up at my grandparents' house there till I was around 9. And musically, my grandparents were listening to Terry Wogan in the morning, so I was getting them pop music in the morning, or barely pop music. We all listened to Top of the Pops. I had young aunties in the household who were almost like big sisters. Mm-hmm. So Thursday night, Top of the Pops was a big thing. Then I had an auntie who would play on this gramophone I've got here from my grandparents, actually. She was playing dub. My granddad would be playing hymns. And so that was like, as a child, that was the early musical influences that I was getting. before we even get to sound system, really. Which, okay, I mean, my auntie, one of the... Oh, go on.
No, carry on.
One of my young aunties went out with a guy called Straggy, and he was a member of Maverick International, which was one of Chapeltown's 3 or 4 main sound systems at the time. And so, literally, if you left the house for christenings or any family gathering, more than 10 people, the sound boxes were going to turn up. And that was, you know, from roots reggae, I suppose, and a lot of dub back in the day, because this is even as a small child, before the super heights of Bob Marley, even as someone who was, you would say, was the leader of reggae, even, you know, it was, I guess the Wailers and all that music was in there, but he wasn't a big superstar yet. I remember when I was a little kid first.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Painting the picture. Now, when we were doing the doing a quick check earlier, you made a comment. You talked of your heritage. Now it's quite funny because you were saying earlier, you know, you're mixed race, and I was thinking it's weird, really. Weird might not be the right word. I'm not even sure if people are, if you can say mixed race nowadays, dual heritage, mixed race. To say dual heritage makes me feel like it's too much of a mouthful. Now that might be me being a little bit ignorant. I don't know. But mixed race, back in the day, there was a term even more frowned upon that we would use, right?
Half-caste. We grew up with half-caste.
Exactly.
Not even knowing anything. Again, I grew up in my grandparents' house, so that was a generation older. So they cottoned on to PC, if you like, a lot later. And so we were just, you know, but like I told you earlier, I grew up in a black community with black grandparents and a black dad and black sisters and black aunties. And so, and because my granddad is like was quarter Portuguese, he was fair-skinned like me. And so I had an auntie that was fair-skinned like me, although full black, and I had another auntie that was darker like my grandma. So I just didn't even, until I was about 14, it just, I knew I was mixed race, but it never came a thing, you know. And if you got any racism in the 70s, which you did even at school, even up in the North Leeds area, you know, I'd come home saying, oh, this kid called me a blackie or even a packie or whatever, that you just get called anything brown insult, I suppose. But still, we were brought up, as I was telling you, to be very, very proud of our heritage in that black community. My auntie, she's got a blue plaque and everything, you know, for being the first black female headmistress and what have you in the north. And I mean, her heritage goes back to bringing the carnival here to Leeds, the first carnival, which was a direct result with a couple of other elders, if you like, to counteract the press and what was ended up proven to be systematic racism on behalf of West Yorkshire police that were goading young boys, young guys, into getting into trouble so that they could arrest them. And so my auntie would be, because she's the educated one, would be the person that would get called. Can you come and help out and go to the police station, blah, 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 blah. So she ended up, like I said, almost becoming the auntie of the whole community. And
the elder statesperson of the community.
Yeah. Who everybody's mum and everyone else's auntie and everybody, all the other elders knew and respected. And so, like I said, she was literally our headmistress at school, you know. I mean, and she wouldn't pull any punches on us, the offspring, if you like, or the relatives. So I got caned a lot. I got caned for being late. I only lived 10 minutes around the corner from school, but I was a sauntering child and buying midget gems in the post office or whatever. Until she eventually handed the cane over to Mr. Hyman, the deputy head, and said, just you beat him now. I'm sick of beating him. You know? But this was the community we were brought up in, Saturday school, where we all had to go to Saturday school because in the 70s we were told that it's going to be so much harder for us. We had to be better. And and everybody had to go. We all went to summer project together. I mean, literally a community of thousands. We all grew up together, you know.
Fantastic. It would be later on that as you got older that those issues would increase and that the tension on the street would rise. But it's really interesting. And I've read a few books about that era as well, about the birth of the carnival, some of which you would have seen when I was talking to Matt Annis a couple of weeks ago. He covered some of that in his book as well, Join the Future. So you know, your rites of passage growing up, music was always a big part for you, I'm assuming. School discos, things like that. Were you box boy for the sound systems?
All of that. All of that. I mean, again, I've got this gramophone here.
Is it a top loader or is it a front slide doors?
It's not a Blue Note. It's got it did have a diamond stylus in it. I get the name of it now. It'll come back to me at some point in the chat. But it's an original. It's a proper gramophone with a lot of heavy weight under there. Garrard. It's got a Garrard turntable in it. Wow. Give you an idea. So when we were kids, because I was the little kid at my grandparents', I was always there. So I felt comfortable in the front room, right, where no one else went. And so come Christmas events or any family events, it'd end up with the little kids playing Monopoly or whatever in the front room, working out dance moves to show off to the elders and aunties and what have you. And I just happened to, because I was comfortable, I used to control the turntable a lot. And people have asked me this a lot, so I know it was the albums were K-Tel's Disco Days and Disco Nights, like a double LP. I think there was two of them, two double LPs, and MJ's Off the Walls. They were the real significant standout records that we used to be playing in, you know, like Lifting the Needle. You can start it again. You can start it again. You can start it again, like trying to loop stuff, you know. As games, just like skill games. We were always doing skill games as kids, you know. Can you do it? Yeah, can you start it again? Can you make it stay in loop?
Brilliant. So, did you ever get out to the parties, the house parties, the blues, the shebeens, in other people's places?
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose
it was just the general. That was the environment for many black communities up and down the length and breadth of the country. Was the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, it's this sound system link where the same vibe at the christening party. So after the church and after the little bit after where you go and eat, you end up going in a house, a party house. It's called a party house, and there just used to be a few of them in the community. And they'd set up the speakers and they're setting up the party, but it's just exactly what, by the time I'm maybe 13 and I'm going to the blues myself now, it's just the same principle. There's a bar in the kitchen or a bar, do you know what I mean, with the speakers, and you might charge a little bit in or whatever, and you're drinking rum and black and you can barely move and you just stood up like that, trying to skin up if you can, and trying to drink your rum and black and trying not to spill your drinks on anyone that you shouldn't really, you know. But
Fun
blues
memories.
was a big part of my life in that. So Sundays was where I ended up at age around 18 doing a lot of DJing, house music by this time. I mean, we've skipped a lot of, hip hop. I was in hip hop bands. I made beats for loads of people as a young person. And but Sundays was this blues, and it was on a street of about another 8 blues, cowboys. All these old man terms, even Sundays was just this old, dusty old man blues, really, where they were just playing kitchenga stuff that nobody young wanted to go there. Mm-hmm. But on the end, there was Cliff's Blues. And for me, that was one of my favorites. Some of my friends like up at Jufis, they might be upset to hear that because they had a nice blues as well. But Cliff's was the blues where I kind of grew up, and it was mostly reggae. But then these DJs, Frost and Pedro, These don't get mentioned much, and they probably for Leeds deserve to get a little bit more mention, actually, because they do the soul hour where, the soul boys with the spats and the beer rags and what have you would come and congregate a little bit, get the moves out. And it was Twilight, Frankie Beverly and stuff like that, Maze, right? Mm-hmm. But then for me, I remember there was this moment where, and this must be about 86, 87, where he's playing Russ Brown, Find a Way, and then he's playing Chippy, It's Okay, in the same set. And that's when my head just went, pong! It just literally went, wang! Because I remember me and my friend had been listening to hip-hop, and it got to the point of Schoolie D, which was really slow, and I'm like 16, I want to go fast, do you know what I mean? And we used to go to a teen scene disco when I was around 15, and there was a little Italian DJ in there called Gino, I think, and he played Agadoo and Wigwam Bam and whatever it was, but he also played a shitload of Chicago house and Detroit house, like the original stuff, Mm-hmm. And we were just very lucky. One of my first house experiences is leaving that place aged about 15, 9, 10 o'clock, summer evening like now. We end up getting in a big fight with the National Front, which used to happen a lot in town at that time of night. We get on the bus and we're all laughing. Like I said, literally 3 busloads going back to Chapeltown. And one big girl has just started hammering out a bass kick and someone else has just gone, boop, 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 boop. And someone else has just gone, Jack the Groove, Jack the Groove. And this is like 3-4 years before rave.
Yeah.
The rave hasn't happened here. Everyone at school hates house music at this point. It all sounds the same. Jackie Buddy, what are you on about? And they liked Erasure, and they liked The Cure, and they liked all whatever the football hooligan pop kind of songs were, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that was, like I said, before rave anyway.
Well, what was I do know it, and it's gone completely out of my head. Don't You Want Me Baby? They were from up Sheffield, Leeds way, weren't they? What's the name of the group?
Utah Saints you're on about?
No. They someone's going to tell me now. There's a bit of a delay, so it's going to come through. Before I get that answer, I'll send a shout out to Mickey C, who says hi. Also, Dave Broadbent passed through and said hello earlier. Good evening, everybody. The two Oakley, what was his name? Human League.
Thank you, Gary. I don't know.
Human League.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Gary.
Sheffield. Yeah. Christmas number 1 forever, right? Yeah.
Because that was the big scene up there, right? Around that time.
Well, all them anyone who did electronic music when I was a kid, I loved it. I loved it all because I played piano as a kid and used to go to Fox's Music and hit these Akai things. And I was just blown away that you could hit one key. All this stuff would happen. And so when I was a kid, it was always on Old Grey Whistle Test, Top of the Pops, whatever. They always had Ensoniq keyboards.
I could not stand the Old Grey Whistle Test.
No, I loved it. I got into, because I suppose even before Rude Boy, so before hip-hop, before Rude Boy, the thing that caught my attention on TV was kind of the punk and the prog rock. You know, a bit more theatrical stuff. I would like. I'm not necessarily feeling it musically, but it would just have me like, what the heck are they doing? You know, and then it was just this electronic music. I remember I was mad for Visage, for what these guys were doing, and then the other UK guys then were Bomb the Bass and all these guys, and you know they were trying to copy the Americans and all this stuff. I just used to be crazy about all of that stuff when I was about 14, 15 even, you know, just reading about it even, you know.
Right. And so were you buying vinyl at this point? Do you have part-time jobs? What was the hustle at 13 and 14 years of age?
I mean, I was always a worker as a kid. I was that kid who had like 10 paper rounds and the extra thing, and just always had a little change in my pocket, with, you know, during school to buy your own Harrington or whatever it is you needed to get. Because my grandparents were older, like, you don't need nothing fashionable. Do you know what I mean? If you wanted anything cool, you need to get it yourself. So, but record buying. So I've got an uncle called Paul who is Mr. Hip Hop. Paul Edmead. He's the first person I ever saw with Technics. And in fact, it was me and my friend Bozzy. We were getting into music. We used to play off any old kind of record players we had. I was playing at the youth club, playing electro and stuff a little bit because I was rubbish at breaking. And so I thought, okay, well, I understand what to do with these. I'll do this more. And so we were both buying, like you say, it was those electro albums were the first thing I remember really wanting to collect. And then when house music happened, that just went up another notch. I remember literally bursting into Ozzy's room saying, and he was, to put it into time context, he was drawing Madonna pictures. He was that into Madonna, right? And I was like, right, you got to stop all of this. You got to listen to this. How this is going fast and it's going and so then we really started to buy records. So I'm about 16, where I'm going to crash on a Saturday to spend, I think I worked in McDonald's or whatever the fast food joint was then, and you get paid £150 in a packet in cash, and I'd spend £130 a week on records, hip hop and house. and maybe even what we used to call street soul, Alison Williams and all that kind of stuff then, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just spent it all on records. That was it.
Amazing. Amazing. So by the time you left school, what time did you leave school?
I tried to stay on a little bit to do retakes or something. We were the first GCSE year. But I didn't have the aptitude. I'm not really, I don't have the attention for that, really. I've worked out since then. So I left in the end at about 17. I tried college for a few months, but that was just the common room, really. Table football, street fighter, jokes. Didn't go to one. I mean, I'd gone to do computers and it was teaching me how a till worked. Age 17, I'm like, no, that's not for me. And so, yes, and I'd kind of left home, similar age. It was all the same kind of thing. And I was an idiot when I left home. I was DJing a little bit.
Did you ever bring trouble to the house?
I did once, actually. Something really stupid. So at school, we used to have a shop and you'd try and buy single cigarettes. And one day he'd let you and one day he wouldn't. And that kind of hypocrisy just annoyed me, even when I was about 15. Stupidly, I scratched the car with the key. And anyway, 2 years later, a year later, there was like a knock at the door. And I got arrested and locked up, actually, for about 12 hours in my pants, right? Like still at school, 15, 16, to teach me a lesson. And
in the Y-fronts.
Yeah, probably, you know, like, because anything else I would have hung myself in. But they were just teaching me a lesson, I guess. Did it work? I don't know. I left home not long after that. I was more scared of my dad than the police, for sure.
Right. Wow. So by this time then, obviously a lot of changes going on in the country with from the soul, funk scenes, the sound systems, the blues would have still been going on, but the rise of the all-dayers. You were travelling at this point.
Well, I used to knock around with people like DJ Martin, who was part of LFO. And I was a young'un, and they would drive places and take me with them. I was a bit of a dancer, so I'd get into the dance battles, whether that would be the fusion stuff. And I was really young. And it was interesting listening to your Etsy chat the other week, and they were talking about, which I never even recognised, about their pain of the B-boy scene coming and wrecking that soul boy scene, which I was one of them B-boys. So I was quite happy for it going that way because I was growing up, I suppose, at that age. I'm like maybe 4 or 5 years younger than those guys, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was the B-boy thing that had got me into the clubs, really. I was, like I said, I was DJing for hip-hop bands, little local things, doing shows. And so I was always already in the clubs from 14, just music-wise. But we played hip-hop and house together. So while I didn't feel that shift of that soul boy scene for house, I felt, yeah, I suppose I did. The whole club scene, when rave happened, rave just smashed everything out of the way. And people's nose got bent out of joint, and a lot of black people stopped coming to the clubs because they didn't like the drug part of it. And it was, I mean, it looked really, really different then. I remember being, 17, and I'd started knocking around with a couple of what I would call crazy white guys at the time, who ended up being, you know, brothers, really, really long-lasting friends, life-lasting friends. And we would look at the stage in the warehouse, which, you know, I had a high top, I'd been with the, you know, doing the dance battles in the circle, doing all the stuff. And then we'd see these guys, and they were like, all the clothes were long, and they used to freak us out, if I'm honest. It really, really scared us. But curiosity got the better of us, and, you know, we tapped up little Kev, which is the only name that I'm allowed to mention. I've asked his permission for the book if I write that, because he's just the guy that gave everybody the first ever things in the warehouse, so he's kind of famous. He kind of needed to be in the book that way. But anyway, so we got a little bit of acid off him, and then it was getting even more curious. And I'll tell you the truth, in Chapeltown, in black community, anything more than weed might as well be crack.
Yeah.
And so in our chip shop, Hunters, there was a poster on the wall, and it was an anti-crack campaign poster, and it had a Rasta on the toilet smoking a crack pipe with the door ajar, and outside the door is the mum thinking, where's the TV gone? and the mum's asking for it. And is this anti... this was what's in my head when I'm looking at these like smashed out people in the warehouse stage. I'm genuinely frightened. You know, I grew up in church and all this stuff. You know, but I'm curious.
Not frightened enough to stop you from partaking yourself.
Well, I'll tell you just how frightened. So I took these so-called cool new ravers and everything. I'm like, listen, before you do any of these things, we're going to the library. This is before Google, right? Before the internet, yeah? And we went in the red book and it was like, crack, definite addiction, cocaine, definite addiction. There was no MDMA in there. So anyway, we tried acid that day.
LSD. And was it a good experience? Not obviously. I don't know. Obviously, be ridiculous. But we're not hyping. We're not hyping. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay here. Have you got is there anything else using the internet in your house? Because you're quite sketchy.
Phone off there.
If you're not downloading anything or whatever, just pause it all.
Pull the phone off, yeah.
Should be fine. But what I was going to say was, from years of watching the TV, we do not encourage people to go out and take LSD. And yet at the same time, Malcolm, tell us all about your fantastic first experience.
Yeah, I didn't have a fantastic. It were kind of little, really. We just used to giggle. We just used to giggle a lot. Me and my mate, and God rest his soul now, Luke. So there you go. There's your warning. I mean, the two are not necessarily connected, the two facts. But anyway, this kid was like, I looked young, but he looked about 10. He looked like Jesus. I met him, he was getting mugged. So this is, again, just before the rave scene was really kicking off here. We used to have a party. So Nightmares on Wax used to do these jams over in Hyde Park. And I'm from North Leeds. So DJ Martin did these jams on Roundy Road. We used to call them jams. They were just a house party with a speaker in a bar, and we'd go and make our dub plates on cassettes and go and everybody would play their tracks, right? And what happened was, I remember Walt came up and was just signing everybody. They signed Nightmares, they signed LFO, and they came up to Astoria, which is where they used to have a big rave upstairs, and we used to do our more urban, if you like, thing downstairs, house and hip-hop. And anyway, so up at that area, there'd be this mix of ravers and black folk, if you like. And at that point, a lot of off-the-nut young kind of people got mugged in the community quite a lot. There was a lot of that going on. It was the back end of the crack epidemic, or probably the middle of the crack epidemic in Chapeltown. So a lot of young kids were getting mugged. And anyway, I seen this kid with blonde Jesus bobbing flowing hair thing, a gold denim jacket on, a gold bum bag, picture of Jesus on his T-shirt, some long flares and his gold cowboy boots. And these kids are trying to mug him. I'm like, it looks too pitiful to be letting him get mugged. So I go over and I get speaking to him. It turns out he's the kid brother of another mate of mine. And anyway, that's who I started knocking around with, who kind of got me more into the rave side of the house music. I remember, look, there were people starting to do things. Tony Annan, I don't know if he gets mentioned a lot, but Tony Annan and a lad called Adam, they were bringing people like Nightmares on Wax through in the warehouse. This is, again, around 1989. And they had a thing called Chaos on a Friday and Soak on a Saturday. And for me, that is where raving in Leeds City Centre, anything large, began, where it just switched from all of the boogie and whatever music to just rave. And I was part of it, but I was definitely on the fringes, while others were making more moves at that stage, because I was still young, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So I want to say, I'm not sure if I did say earlier, hi to Andrew. Thanks for passing by. Also to Mr. Rogers, who will recognise some of the names from these clubs up north. Tony Hannon, you mentioned, he does get mentioned a lot, and obviously doing a lot of big things now with the revivals going on. So by the time the rave kicked in, were you trying to get yourself to spin at any of these places?
What happened was, I already had the records that the ravers were suddenly loving, and a lot of them didn't have. I always think of what is it, Karina, Baby Let Me Love You For Tonight. I always think of that as a record. Mm-hmm. Where we were playing down the blues, always a bit more underground. So it was kind of like peak rave in the city centre, and then we'd play a lot of bassier stuff down in the blues. And even then, I was like fourth down the tier in that roster of DJs. There was DJ Mikey. Don't know if he gets a mention to do with rave in Leeds, but he was one of Leeds' biggest rave DJs right at the beginning. And then there was Task, Leafy, Mark Leaf, who's got a big name, doing a bit more hard housey stuff, but he's continued from that day. And then myself, which meant sometimes I went until 6 a.m. to play. Mm-hmm. But people like Dave Beer, before he had Basics and those guys would come in and they'd be really like, oh my God, you've got these records, it's so cool and what have you. And that's when I suppose I met Lee Wright, because Lee Wright started to get in with Basics because he was a lot more of a polished character in 1990 than I was. I was still a lot more street, and my attitude to giving mixtapes out was not very good at all at that era, because I was like, what do you mean you need a tape? You've heard all the music. What's wrong with you, man? Do you know what I mean? I had networking 101 as a zero at that age. And so Lee had got in with Basics, and then he got into Galaxy. And then this is that story that he always says, is that he would come down to Basics, down to Sunnish from Basics, expecting to try and play some tune, because we had, it was a big crowd. It became a big infamous thing, this Sonny's Blues, that ran for years. Mm-hmm. And he said that I came down there with my vocally bits and thought I was going to hit it, and you, man, were just smashing me up with some beeline. And I just took my little records and I went back to Galaxy FM and what have you. But the truth is, we used to give him a bit of a hard time because, he was a bit squeakier clean than us, and we were a bit rougher. We used to nudge him about a little bit when we were younger.
Gotta give Lee a shout out. Obviously been on many of these streams with us, so we already know his story, but it's good to hear another perspective of it. Also shout out to Jeff watching. Good evening, sir. Anyone else that's passing through, feel free to say hello. And if you are enjoying the conversation, guys, do me a favor, just like the stream and maybe share it as well, because it'll help more people see it. Okay, so where do you feel the conversation continues?
Okay, so then at Sunny's, I probably ruined my DJ career by partying too much and focusing on having a really, really good time for about 18 months, like a really good time. And then it came to a point where I was playing. So me and Matt, so then we'd made another little crew now. So there was me, Becky, again, rest his soul. Sadly, I've lost 3 of my best 5 friends, that have all been involved in all of this story that I'm telling you about up until a certain point. So there was me, and how me and Becky got friends was I'd had a load of records left randomly on a doorstep, like some really good records, like the original Rhythm is Rhythm records, and a lot of the early Detroit and Chicago stuff, the originals that I'd had from 15, 16, a big yellow crate of them like that had got left on a doorstep for the Rag and Bone Men. And it had happened a couple of days prior to me opening up, helping to open up another blues just opposite Sunny's. And so I needed some records. And so me and this guy, Becky, had, we'd smoked a few joints and we'd had a few drinks, and we used to talk a lot when we were young, and I knew he had some records. And so I said, look, I know you don't play, but I need to use your records because I've got this blues opening up tomorrow, right? What had happened was there was a scary guy called Tony C. I'd been told that I had to get picked up by him the next day in this rackety old gold Mercedes. This is, again, like 1990. And anyway, Tony C was a bit of a dude, and he picked me up, and we had to go get in all the alcohol and all the rest of it for this blues party we're opening up. And anyway, he opened up his box of Bensons. He took out his joint and I was like, that don't smell like no weed. And this guy literally had like coke joints ready rolled in his Benson for the morning and afternoon jaunt, so we had to go about our business, Anyway, I rang up Becky and I was like, look, I know you got some tunes. I'll split whatever money I get out of it if we can play your tunes. And that led to me, Becky, and Godwin forming a little group called Chromatone Express. That was Becky came up with the ideas as far as names were concerned. And we DJed together. And we ended up getting hooked up by John McLennan, who was from Scotland and who was Zero B's manager, and also a Utah Saints manager. And like Dave Beer, we made records with Dave Beer and Back to Basics, and all those guys kind of wanted to get us as this kind of rough urban street. I don't know if they wanted to, I don't know what they were copying at the time or influenced by, whether it was the what's they called, Daddy Freddie and all those guys. I don't know, but they wanted to get us up on rooftops and put us in baggy clothes for photo shoots and all these kind of things. But we went to Scotland and we made a lot of, well, we didn't make a lot of music. We drank a lot of wild turkey. Did a lot of bongs with these Scottish guys and had a lot of fun and had a lot of dangerous car journeys and never really made much music. People buy the music now, funnily enough. There's music that we put out on Back to Basics and early stuff we'd put out with Matt Jam Lamont that young kids
Is this
now
Chromatomic Express, you say?
Express, yeah, we did a few. We used to get these record deals where we never had any equipment, but because we were DJing pretty underground stuff, people would say, right, you know, there's a bit of money, whatever it was. I think it was like, I don't know, 300 quid for a couple of days studio. You try and get 3,000 releases. What of them easy publishing deals it was then. And we made about 8 records, 10 records, or some in London, some in Leeds, some with Basics, but we never really did anything with them at the time. But it's young people now contact me and go, you know that record you made? And I go, yeah, we haven't got those DATs anymore. They're selling for £150 on Discogs and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, well, no, I don't have the DAT anymore, sorry. So that was the thing then. We got on up here, but everyone was still into piano house and the rave look, you know, the cagoules and the kickers and the thing. And we started going to London. We started to go to Ministry when it opened in 91. And that was a whole different ballgame because we were playing Strictly's and Nervous and Zach Toms, and that Zach Tom sound, those crunched up snares, like even before Todd Edwards, that was exactly where we were at. And nobody up here was having any of it. It just wasn't happening up here at all. We in the blues, we brought in a lot of records like Louis Vega's Ride on the Rhythm, even before that, Debbie Gibson's things, you know, all of those things we were championing really early on. But it wasn't really catching a vibe anywhere other than Sonny's. And even at Sonny's, they wanted cliched vocals tracks that they wanted the same week after week after week. So I was feeling stifled musically up here. And then we got to London and they were just playing it all there in the Ministry. Guys like, what's the guy from, he's like Italian looking guy who was played at Movement, I think it was. His name will come back maybe because I can see his face. But at the end of every Ministry party, at about 10 a.m., Matt Jam Lamont would go and open up Chaplin's Frog and Nightgown or Elephant and Castle pub. And he was doing exactly what we were doing.
Have you got your years right? Have you got your year right? You said 91. That sounds a bit early to me. 91
was when Ministry opened and the Eurotunnel opened. And that's when all I remember is it was 91, 92, we were going to London and we were mixing with Italians and people that were dressed glamorously and not in burghouses like everybody up here. And it was mind-blowing. So, I don't know, maybe it was 92, 93, possibly, like I said on that catch-up call earlier the day. So not that great for me. But all I know is that when it ended, it was that it would be those after-hours things would start, and that whole Sunday thing was the best part of the whole weekend for us. And them times we were still living in Leeds. Sometimes 10 of us would get a limo down because it'd be 40 quid each for the limo. That would be better than a hotel, better than, you know, and all the rest of it. And we'd be living large, kind of in our heads at least, or in our egos, travelling down as Black Take That at the service stations. I thought, being stupid. Can't tell all of them stories on here. Some people have been getting in trouble.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you're only scratching the surface with these stories. I'm really curious as to why I'm getting this. You're really quite juttery, whatever the word is. You're buffering a hell of a lot on your. The voice is okay, but your camera is. I really don't know what it is.
My camera's rubbish. The internet's pretty fast here. It's It's all right. The only thing I can think of is maybe it's my camera.
No, it's not. It's not. It just seems like it's the frames are buffering. So I mean, audio-wise, it's fine, but it is what it is anyway. We'll make do without we're getting, and I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, so the Sunday scene, London, 93, 94. The you mentioned Zach Toms. That we're not even going to try and reel off all the names of the producers and the records, but I'm fully aware of that era because the exact same thing was happening for us in Birmingham as well, So then how long did it take before things started to take root up in Leeds, or was it a long way away?
Well, the truth is I left Leeds. I'd had enough up here for a number of reasons. I left to grow up, really. I was being a bit of an idiot up here. And so I left my auntie lived down in East Dulwich, and she'd always been asking us to come down. She worked at Battersea Adventure, and I left for London to go and do DJ music workshops at Battersea Adventure. So Solid Crew and all those kids when they were kids, passed through those DJ workshops and what have you. I did more stopping them from getting arrested than I did teaching them any DJing, if I'm completely honest. And so I don't know really what happened in Leeds. Well, I can tell you what happened in Leeds after that, but we were in London, but everybody moved down. My mates, Becky, Godwin eventually, Tom. I mean, literally all my friends from Leeds moved to London. And like I said, we cut a couple of records with people like Matt Jam Lamont. But then what happened for me is I started to get a little bit of success in the garage scene in London. The garage scene changed to what resembled more of a drum and bass scene for me. There were becoming more MCs, more rewinds, more garishness, more champagne, more... And I wasn't feeling it as much, truth be known. And by the time I was 26, I had my first kid, and I kind of stepped off it all. Mm-hmm. I didn't bother DJing much. In fact, I did DJ quite a lot in London, but just at bars for money. Playing at members bars like Noble Rock with people like Hugh Grant and these kind of stars on the dance floor, and earning more money than I've ever earned playing anything that I enjoy playing ever, as you know how it goes. Until somebody took me up to West London on a Wednesday night to a place called Cherry Jam. Now, all this time, I'd still been making music, but I was making more two-steppy stuff that was more jazz-influenced than R&B influenced. And so this party
Cherry Jam was at Notting Hill Art Centre, was it?
Notting Hill. I don't think it was actually at the Art Centre at this particular point, because I didn't know nothing about Phil Asher at this point. I didn't know anything about the term broken beat or anything, because now we're fast-forwarding now to about early 2000s. In that time,
was Cherry, just confirm for me, was Cherry Jam Ben Watt's party? Or was that...
No, actually, no. Honestly, no? I can't tell you. I'd been taken there on a random Wednesday night. I was a parent every weekend. I didn't really go. I didn't know what was going on, what was cool. I didn't know there was a soulful house scene or anything like that. I promise you, I didn't know anything. But I liked the vibe of this party in that some records you knew, some records you didn't. When it was dub, when it was hip-hop, when it was house, and the crowd, as little as it was, liked it, and I liked that. And then there was these odd early broken beat tunes. That's the only thing I can say that were a bit like two-step, but jazz-influenced. So this time I'm still not DJing any of it. I'm playing for money still, playing R&B and hip-hop and all the rest of it. And I didn't bother getting to seriously think about DJing for passion again until I moved back to Leeds in 2009.
Okay.
I'd kind of brought up my kids, the big ones, I'd done the 20 years with them, or 18 years with them. And I moved back in 2009, and that's what got the vocation, if you like, going, is that I love my city. And when I was a kid in those rave days, there used to be goths, b-boys, soul boys, reggae heads. There used to be so many different groups and styles and influences. And by the time I came back in 2009, it had all just gone the same. It just shots and smashed and rave. There didn't seem to be any kind of flavour in there. And I wanted to DJ. I like playing out in Leeds. I've got lots of friends here and what have you. And as much as I knew Dave Beer and all the other big brands and that up here, I didn't think I would get to play the music I wanted to play. And this time, I'm massively into broken beats. I'm massively into early Afro house, people like Trinidadian Deep and early jazz stuff and early Oscillado things. And there was no one playing it. So I put on a party. I conned everybody because I know Leeds wouldn't come out for me going on about a good music thing. So I set up a whole profile called Afro Susie that a lot of my starving male friends thought was a real woman.
You catfished everyone.
Well, you know what it is but I've always gone on about good music, good music, good music. And I knew that if Malcolm came back to saying just good music in any kind of marketing campaign, it just wouldn't happen. I had to create a whole marketing concept. That led on to Afro Coalition of Afro Susies, and she had a party. Loads of people came out. Yeah. That's it's not as good as the original logo when we had Ewan and everybody in it, but yeah, that was the original party in 2009. And the reason for it is I just wanted to DJ. It's as simple as that. There was no more reason behind it. I'd never thought about booking names or any of that kind of stuff at all.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the first party then.
So at that point, it was Afro Coalition. The name, I didn't want to say black music anymore. I think we were talking earlier about half caste and this, that, and the other. I think that, you know, and people will debate that with me, that it is black origin and all this stuff. But I just thought, you know, it's Afrocentric music at least, and we're all about, it's about bringing us together. And that was the point of the title. And I tried it with R&B DJs, with jazz funk DJs, house DJs, broken beat, all the different styles. But as you probably guess, once it gets to 120 plus BPM, it don't really come back again too easily. And us househeads just had a good time while everyone else was still kind of just waiting for the R&B and that again. So the second party was dead. Literally nobody. And who came through was Ewan Mitchell, Sileg, and Ewan Mitchell I already knew from previous years in the garage days. So a bit that we missed out was when I went to London, garage eventually did get up here, a guy called Marvin Swiftfingers G, you might have heard of. So he had some big success up here in those early garage days with NATO, and he brought a lot of names up here. He was doing a lot of stuff with Tough Jam and all the rest of it. But I wasn't up here. I'd come and play. I'd be in London and I'd come up with records. I'd get frustrated because, again, everyone just want to hear the vocals that they want to hear, and I was buying brand new records in London, so it was a bit of a frustrating thing for me. So anyway, Ewan I'd already known from playing at one of Marvin's garage things back in the day. He used to be in a thing called the Mitchell Brothers. Sileg I'd heard of, who had played with guys like Donald Nevelson. They had a soulful thing happening up here just before I arrived in 2009. DJ Martin was doing something called Masters of Funk, which he was getting all the black community in town, but it wasn't to house music. Then he tried to do Masters of House with these guys. So anyway, all these other guys came and said, look, I can see you're trying to do something. Do you want to join forces type thing, yeah? And I was like, yeah. I want to, yeah, why not? Then the next thing that happened was a guy called Nui, who was like I'll say this laughingly, he was like a mega fan of Pevan Everett. He was like, we used to laugh saying he's got Pevan Everett posters on his ceiling. He's like a mega fan. He was from Huddersfield and he used to rock some parties. Again, I never knew these guys. This was all happening when I was in London. The guy called Jagger from Very Soulful Productions. I don't know if that means anything to you, but they were bringing American guys over, same time as Steve Rain with Hard Times and all that while I was in London. Anyway, they said, look, do you want to, we want to do Pevan Everett. Huddersfield's too small. Do you want to help us do it in Leeds? And I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Pevan Everett. Again, up until this point, I'd never thought about booking a name. I wanted to put my friends on. My friends were good DJs. I never had any idea of wanting to sell a ticket because of a name, or just none of that had happened until Pevan Everett. And I was like, well, I'm a big fan of Pevan Everett as well. At that point, my day job was shit. Putting it bluntly, I was like telling Thompson Local, while Google existed, it was really, really hard. And so I found myself negotiating with Pevan and his wife, Billy, on the phone in Chicago till whatever time, instead of getting up for work. Because that was just much better. Pevan was like, they were genius level crazy, you know? They were just, the way that they thought about music and everything was just so appealing to me, in that it was just everything that you want your stars to be like, right? You know, Michael Jackson, Madonna, these untouchable people. He was really like that. So anyway, we did that party, cut a long story short, and it was the best party we ever did in the whole 8 years of Afro. Nothing ever came close to it again. But that then made some responsibility, because a lot of people came to Leeds from everywhere. And it started to get this thing in my head, is that if we don't do it, no one's doing it in Leeds. And people would say, oh, what's happening Saturday night? You know, my friend's coming up from London. I go, I don't know. But there'd be something happening in Manchester, in Birmingham, in Liverpool, in London, obviously, and all these places. We didn't have anything here. And so we got about it. We just set about it and started to think of what to do next. And we laughed, saying, well, you know, on the debrief of the event was like, well, who should we do next? So I'd love to do Jazzy Jeff, and we laughed it off. But then in a couple of years, we ended up doing Jazzy Jeff as well. And everybody else, Lil Lewis, Frankie Knuckles. I mean, like my posters, I was just doing it for poster stuff. I was like, I want to meet these guys. I didn't care about the money or anything like that.
The money that never materialised.
It was great. When I was 17, I left Leeds to London to go buy some trainers, some black Air Jordans. And I went and bought He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper, the Gatefold album. I don't know if you remember it. And if you'd have said to me then, give me your left arm and you can go pick Jazzy Jeff up from Manchester Airport, do beatbox with him and hang out with him and bun weed with him on the back and all the rest of it, yeah. I'd take my left arm, do you want my right foot? I'd give you him. And so this is what I was doing it for, Andy. I said it to you before, and I've said it before. I've never felt like a promoter, just facilitating a gap and trying to meet people and trying to make stuff happen for my city, really. That's it. I've never made any money out of it. It's cost me money, as you well know, right?
Good evening, Emily, throwing her hands in the air. Lisa as well. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt Malcolm while he was chatting. Thank you for being here. Also, Angel gives you high praise, saying an inspiring story. And that's why we're here, inspire and be inspired. So doing what you love, never made any dough. It's all about that hustle. Other hustles along the way that you've got dealing with. I know the story, but I'll let you tell us about whether it's sound systems, teaching, cooking.
When I was that kind of hustle, look, I don't know. All right, so I had a sales career for 20 odd years. I was happy to go and earn as much as I could earn in capitalism world, where I get my 10%, give my boss the 90%. That's what brought up my big kids. I came with all that here. I've never survived off music. I've never relied on music for money or bills or none. It's never been like that for me, thankfully, in a lot of cases. In 2015, I had a car accident. I was working in the personal injury. I used to put on an award for the personal injury lawyers in London and all the rest of it. And I was driving to the Association of Personal Injury Lawyers conference at Celtic Manor, and my Passat estate just stopped at 75 miles an hour. I had a truck in the back of my estate. I barely had a scratch on me. I've got a little twinge in my base and my back's left from it. But this guy thought he'd killed me. And that made me thought, wow, I've just escaped death, right? And my sales career was a bit of a prize fighter by now. It wasn't the big hitters. It wasn't fun. It wasn't exciting. It was just going out every day with the suit and stuff. So I just quit. I got some sound system equipment. I thought, I'll hire out some kit. But it was never enough money. So I did a lot of side jobs. I worked in care home. I wanted to do something useful. I'd got up every day for 20 years to only make money. I wanted to be a postman. I wanted to be a milkman. I wanted to do anything that was just literally useful to somebody, like genuinely useful. Anyway, I got a year in the job in the care home. Well, that just didn't suit me. I don't know what to say. I give it a year, but you don't get any sleep. And there's like 15-year-old that look like big men guys that want to beat you up for a cuddle when you've had no sleep. And the truth is, I've still got enough street in me to not. That's just not right for me. It's not. I'm going to get annoyed, you know. So I had to knock that on the head. And in COVID, I happened to fall upon a food idea, which I tried to give to my food friend Stevie 10 years ago. It's a marketing idea. The marketing idea is make it easy to buy black food. Straight up that. You're a marketing person. I'm sure you've, like most people, have wanted to buy some black food at some point, but come up with one of the hurdles. Either they're not open, they haven't got it, she wants to be rude to you at the shop, whatever it is. And so this idea was born, COVID, and it went a lot better than I thought it would go. To the point that now I'm in the city centre, I'm on the Just Eat apps, I'm on the thing. It costs me 3 or 4 days of my week. I've got a partner in there, and I've got this idea.
A big plug for that. Just jerk.
Just jerk. It makes me laugh. It just makes me laugh. But you never know what's going to happen. And you talk about hustler. I'm just open-minded to stuff. I'll give anything a go. I don't really care if things fail. I've been a salesperson for 20 years. 99% of people tell you to get lost. So I don't care if it wins or it fails, as long as I have a go.
Good. Well, someone passing through saying his son boy is our Mally, respect every time, and that's from Jamie Newsom.
That's Newey. That's the Pevan Everett super fan. He's got a good taste in music, our Newey, no doubt about that, and a good love of Rottweilers.
Yes, Newey. Respect. Okay, so you talked about COVID, and I did say from the very beginning that we have kind of raced through this life story. We've covered 50 years in 60 minutes. So don't feel the need that you've got to rush yourself. Tell us then about, you mentioned earlier about going to Cherry Jam. You mentioned about Phil Asher. I know when we lost Phil, you were very moved by that because you had built up quite a relationship with Phil. You saw him as a bit of a mentor. You got to spend time with him. He was giving you tips and tricks and so on and so forth. So let's start off by hearing about yours and Phil's relationship.
So even I never got to know Phil until about 10 years ago, and it had happened. So all that, Cherry Jam happened. I went down to Plastic People a lot. Used to take my friends down there bank holidays for what was it called, Co-op, and the Movement and Forward. I even used to go down to their CDR nights on a Thursday and bust dub plates down there just to check out the production on the set. I used to go down there a lot, and but I never used to know anyone. I never used to go. I had no reason to go chatting to anybody. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just there and enjoying the music. When we had that conversation post Pevan party, we were talking about Jazzy Jeff and everything, and I said, we've got to get Flash up here. And for us, we all agreed that Flash was like the British Louis. Mm-hmm. He was like Britain's answer to Louis Vega in that he had constructed and written and been involved with so much live and electronic music that was so soulful and house music. And he was an artist. He wasn't just a DJ stroke producer guy. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I remember I was still in a sales job at that point, and I remember speaking to Dan Kiley, and he went, "Yeah, I'll get you his number." and Phil was just a realist. That's it. We got on because he was just a realist. He'd had no ego. We didn't really talk about music too tough. I was late back on my lunch break happily because we spoke about our children and we spoke about food and bud. And we spent about 45 minutes just like boys. 90% of, and at one point, me and Phil would speak weekly. It was like, it's like Tuesday, Thursday. Oh, we haven't caught up yet this week. And for the 90% of it, that's what we used to speak about: our children, food, and bud, and a lot of giggling. We were like kids. He was a big kid. That's why we connected as children, like on that childlike silliness, Mm-hmm. And so when he came up here, we just carried on the same. We just got really, I don't know what to say. We just got really fucking stoned, ate a lot of food. He came up with his machine. I was starstruck. I couldn't do anything. I'm like that. I'm not, I'm the same with Martin down in his studio and all these great producers. I'm a bit like, I'll just watch you. I get a bit starstruck because they fiddle around with things real quick. I need to do things in my own time. And I remember saying to Flash, right, I think I'm going to go get some more bud, right? And he was just like, yeah. Just in this like stone world of machine, yeah. And that could have been me and Bozzy when we were 15 making beats then. The vibe and the atmosphere of it was it. And that's what he was. He didn't know that. I don't even think he knew how great people thought he was.
Mm-hmm. Humble. Way too humble.
Really, really humble and
a tragic loss taken way too soon. Paul Marshall joins us. He says, "Good evening." So you mentioned about Martin, Mr. At Jazz. Tell us how you have come to release in the last few weeks a record on the At Jazz recording company, and
have you listened to it?
Some of the never heard it in my life. I've heard it. I'm trying to think. I've heard it on 2 or 3 different podcasts, and everyone loves it.
It's different. Look, I don't know. My son, he's shit hot, and he is like. We'll talk about him in a minute. He's like superb, and he's an artist, and he wants to be a pop star, and all the rest of it. And I, like I said, I don't get involved with music for money. I've got 5,000 tracks in a hard drive there. Some of them people hear, some of them people don't, some of them, and occasionally people like Martin like him. Uh-huh. Martin and I bit his ear the first night I met him. We brought him up to District and he was just bad. I don't know what else to say. He was just bad. He was just smashing the heck out of the set, playing jam after jam after jam. And we were all heightened and on a vibe and everything. I remember I bit his ear. He was just mashing me up that badly. So I think you kind of get a bond when you kind of give someone rabies or whatever the first time you meet them. I think he liked that passion. So anyway, a few years ago now, 4 years ago, he liked one of my things on Instagram. And he's a don, innit? Again, like, if Phil was the Louis of England, you'd have to say that At Jazz might be like the Oshalade of England, He's just a don, innit? He's just a don. Mm-hmm. He's just the best at what he does in the country. It's as simple as that. And so if he shows a little interest in one of your tracks, you're like, oh, maybe I better send you a bit more of it then. And do you like it? And he went, yeah, I do actually. Is it for you? Okay. So we put out a record then, which I make everything basic. I don't have any load of equipment. You can get a decent groove on. And we put out a record called Thank You. He did a really good version of it, but did a lot better than my version. But when I was there, I left a couple more tracks for him that he liked. And he's just busy, That was, like I said, 3-4 years ago. About a year ago, we sent a couple of them out to Coley in South Africa that had done Chasing with him before, which we all liked, which Zachariah Soul had introduced me to at one Southport Weekender years ago. And so I was really excited because the truth is I've never put a record out with a super vocalist like that, She picked this track, which I didn't expect. I thought she'd pick the more Afro house one. Anyway, then 6 months later, she sent the vocal. That was getting more and more excited. Then we were both just getting really busy. We never had time. Cut a long story short, I sent him the full audio stuff and sent him the vocal bit of where we kind of wanted it to be. And then he just finished it up for me, if I'm completely honest with you. He just made sure they sat right. He was happy with my mix, which I'm always pleased about. If At Jazz is happy with your mix, it's a good thing to do. And there you go. Coley's put a really, really sexy, super exciting vocal on it, which has got me excited.
So just remind us, just confirm the full artist and track title.
So it's Wrap Me Up, and the vocalist is Coley, Kholi. You want to get her on Instagram? She's just she's got a big, powerful voice.
Yeah. And under what artist? Remind me of the artist's name.
I'm Malcolm WeLove. Yeah, it's just Malcolm.
Just as Malcolm WeLove. There isn't a production title.
No. I have got a WMD somewhere for some remixes I did for somebody, or WML even. I don't know. People told me years ago, just have one name.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. So Michelle was giving praise to your younger son, saying he's quite a cool dude, and then the older son, the Jesus of the clan.
Well, I've got three boys, and they're amazing. I'm blessed. I'm not going to lie. We'll start with the tall one, the artist. He was down at uni in Surrey. He's like having a year out. I mean, he's a genius child, 21, 6'4". I have to go on my tiptoes to give him a hug now, which he likes because he's like, he's king versus me in the pride now. I've got my little one, 10-year-old, again, multi-talented actor, footballer, just whatever he wants to be, bilingual, multilingual. He's singing songs in Chinese and whatever he wants to do. Just do whatever they want to do. And then Fabi, my eldest son, not my tallest son. He's half Italian. He's just really fucking cool. I don't know what to say. He's just really, really beautiful, really handsome, really talented. I mean, I gave him my Reason 3.5 when he was 14 and all my sounds. And he loves to hear this. He always likes to say this. But I was a little bit like, are you sure? He was sending this music. I was saying, are you sure? Do you need to always have a backup plan? And that burnt him. That what he puts down as a lack of support really fired him up. And he dedicated himself. That's the truth. He just did it day and night. Day and night. He didn't go out. He didn't do girls. He didn't do that. He was just this little nerdy guy. And now, I mean, in COVID, him and all of his 11 musicians that he put together, his show that he sold to the Jazz Cafe, sold out in COVID. Andy, I've lived in London 20 years nearly, and I have been to so many De La Souls and all sorts of concerts there, and I've always wanted to sit in that balcony overlooking the stage. It took my blood clot son to go and have to sell out his concert for me to get that seat. A very, very proud moment, no doubt. Very, very proud. He's done things with Goldie where, to be honest, they were trying to rip him off. They were trying to give him bad deals, and he managed it well, and took hold of it by himself, flogged them a record. And now he's got this. He's just changed. He was doing lots of hip hop and rappy stuff, and now he's just done this falsetto singing disco 80s.
The videos.
Have you seen it?
The videos are wicked.
I mean, if it's called Say Your Name by Osquello. I mean, I can't get it out of my head. It's genuinely got a really good hook on it because he lives in southwest London with a group of great musicians. These young kids are playing bass on session up at Ronnie Scott's on a Tuesday night, for the bands that come in and that, Really, really talented. He's in LA right now.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, you've given him the great foundations. I do say it a lot. I try my best to talk to people who do have inspiring stories, humble people, each and every one of you, because you probably, until you actually sit back and, ponder everything that's gone on for yourself and the things that you've enabled, for your offspring, I think you got to give yourself a pat on the back, man, because, it's big things that have been happening and big things that will continue to happen.
I never pushed my kids. I think that's the thing. That's the only thing that I've done good as a dad in this way. It's just to allow them to do what they wanted to do and encourage what they wanted to do rather than push them into anything. I mean, Ruben, now he's saying he's going to start DJing because everyone DJs on a Saturday night when they go around to each other's house. So I don't know. My thing really, at 50 now, I put on these events. I put that event on at West Indian. I've got a series of events, all that I decided I was never going to do events again, But when I stopped doing them, nobody does them in Leeds. And if I've got the spirit of Miss Paul, my aunt, like I was telling you about earlier, but I feel that if no one else is going to do it, I've got to do it. And that includes bringing through the younger ones. I bring in DJs like Abby Wistance, who's 21, playing Classic Man and stuff on Nervous, that we were playing. like I say, no one was playing in Leeds when I was playing them. So we tried to, I work with disabled radio kids who are these young, really clever LGBTQ movement young people that have got a lot of brains behind what they do. And I want to bring the young and the old and the black and the white and everybody still together in Leeds. That's my thing. It still seems pretty segregated in Leeds. Like Leeds in house music is it's not very soulful and pretty samey.
Lisa, who was at the last one, at the West Indian Centre for the Ordea, she says, "You've got to go. It was such a great party." And then John says it's great at the West Indian Centre as well. So that was a party that he did with Lee. Lee Willow passing through from up north. How are you, sir? How you going, man? So tell us about that party then. Was that a collaboration, or was that solely your event and you had help with others, or?
Look, without making too much of it, because it's probably not too respectful, and we don't need to put all our dirty laundry out, but during COVID, I got married, and within the year, we weren't successful as a marriage. Let's put it that way. And so for those 4 years prior to that point, I'd had my life kind of designed what I was doing. Yeah. Anyway, with a bit of a shock like that, I suddenly had a lot of time on my hands. I was in this, what I call jokingly, my divorce pad in here. And I was looking out, because I'm in the city centre, I'm looking out there and I'm thinking, and I'm looking at Facebook and I'm looking at everything opening up again. I'm still seeing nothing happening. And so it was one of them where you either go large or you go home, right? Leeds needed it to be proper. And sadly, you've got to put on a load of DJs to compete for the other events and all the other stuff and to get people's attention. The thinking behind the people that I was trying to attract there started from Kev Beadle getting booted off Sunset Beat, if I'm honest. Like yourself as a promoter or someone who puts on parties, you've got to look at the calendar, you've got to look at movement of people, you've got to look at the music that you like and all the rest of it. And I remember when Kev Beadle's Mind Fluid thing had removed from there was a lot of people, my age and older actually, that had got, what's for us here now kind of thing. And I mean, that was 10 years ago, 8 years ago, it was a long time ago. So, but I'm still thinking, okay, well, if you put on the right DJs for them, who are DJs that I like, your Kev Beadles, your Craig Smiths, the guys who are the DJ players, not just the ticket sellers, if you like. The idea for Colin Williams, I'd got. In fact, you inspired me to put Colin Williams on as much as I've done in your podcast with him. I'd, like many, had known Colin as a photographer at Southport Weekender. I'd got to know him as a DJ through the Lee Wright streams that we were doing on a Sunday. And I quickly noticed that he knew how to play for the crowd, let alone then when I heard the podcast and he showed me why he knew, because he'd been playing since before me, and he had that ability to understand and then he was more of a punter, so he really knew. Marcia Carr, I've been wanting to bring up here for ages. Journeymen, I played with them years ago at Beat Herder, is it? The camping festival with Woody and them guys. And all these people, I'd always want to do things where people haven't been to Leeds before. I've not brought them to Leeds before. And then you pick a few, if you like, tactical DJs who are going to do the business, but they're going to bring the right people. I'm not going to mention their names because that would sound awful. There's a few of them, right? And they bring the right people. And, people want to come to Leeds. That's what I've discovered, is that for that event there, people miss not having Leeds to come to, not having an event to come to in Leeds. And so I'm glad I've done it. I don't think I'll do it at West Indian Centre again. It makes it a lot harder to manage. But I've got the follow-up in October, Booker T at Jazz, a lot of other good DJs.
Something else is happening in October, and I can't seem to remember what it is. Is yours the 8th? Is it the 8th?
Mine's the 8th. I think I tried to...
It's a couple of days after a little party I might be having.
Oh, really? Where's yours?
Oh, I can't remember.
I can't, honestly. I tried to look at the calendar to have a little look. Like, I moved the date around a bit because I seen KJ had a date. And for me, it's not necessarily about the promoter, but it's just thinking about, we kind of know all these people that are coming to the event now, right? And we kind of know that no one's going to go to 2 events in a month. So don't make them split. Don't split the audience 2 in a month. If I can move it and give them it next month, I'll always do that.
It isn't fair. Not only from your own point of view, it isn't fair to expect the crowd to have to try and be able to go to these things. And you know, if the truth be told, at our age now, we're all pretty much feeding from the same pond. So anyone that makes decisions to do, and that's one of the reasons why I personally haven't done anything in the UK for a while, because there's enough events going on that everyone's out at the same parties under whatever banner it is. I think they're all pretty much the same kind of vibe. Do you know what I'm saying without generalizing too much?
You know, I don't know. I'll be honest. For me personally, I didn't go to Southport Weekender when we were young. I didn't go for whatever reasons when in my 20s and my 30s. We came back here. Ben Brophy, who I didn't know, but had been in Leeds when I lived in London. He was friends with you and all the rest of it. He then liked what we were doing, and he helped us get up with Alex Lowe's and players at their parties and what have you. And I'm sure you'll agree, the first time you go to Southport Weekender, the crowd, you just think, well, these are all the same people as me. You can tell they've all just been listening to Luther and Anita and all the same music, and like us, learning life through the lyrics and all the rest of it. And so I personally think, and this, I don't know whether people would agree, like it or not, but I think that the majority of that audience that were all kind of swimming around in, KJ's built up a lot of like garage to soulful house audience in Birmingham. But for me, a lot of it's similar people that you see at Southport Weekender.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I say we're whatever. I mean, Lisa makes a point. There are still lots of different circles. Yes, there are. But you guarantee you go to a lot of these parties, and it is very much everyone has their own little cliques, but you do still have a core group of people that will follow, and that may be down to the DJs as well. We are getting back to that point now. You mentioned journeymen. You put the journeymen on, you know you're going to get a strong following of people who are going to go and support them. You mentioned,
but they do a job,
Smith.
you know. I don't know about you, but sometimes you put these events together, and it's a little bit like Football Manager, particularly when you've got so many DJs. Too many DJs, if I'm honest. The truth of the matter is, I was meant to be a lot more ruthless and get them all to agree and then cut a few off. But I'm not actually that ruthless. That's my problem. And so when you're managing it, you're looking at people like journeymen. They're a good striking forward midfield. You know what I mean? They're going to give you that push up. You know, I've got people like Dave Needham. He might not like me calling him this, but he'd be like a Teddy Sheringham, you know. He can play anytime. I'm going to tell you, Dave Needham is a great DJ. He don't get enough props at all. He can play any style, and he knows what to play for whoever's in front of him. I love him as a guy as well. He lived with me for a little while over here. But, you know, Marcia Carr, I wanted her to be almost like headline, if you like, you know. I wanted Colin Williams to play higher up the bill, not just out of friendship or because I thought it'd be really good. I thought, you know, him playing just before we get into the jiggy part is a really good way to get all of the ladies and everybody on board, right? Which is something you think about tactically when you're programming, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of.
And he did.
Brilliant. Okay, so 8th of October. So where's the venue then if you're not going back to West Indian Centre? So
the place where I do my food thing, Just Jerk, happens to be in an old nightclub, which was Tiger, and it's now Cargo, and it's a guy I know from London who owns all the Cargos now. But they've got £1 million worth of Martin audio in there. And, you know, we come from speakers, as we said at the top of the show. And Martin Audio, I mean, the Martin Audio sales guy did his job right there because there's just speakers everywhere. So it makes for an easy thing in October. Nobody wants to be outside in October. And then I think next summer I've chatted with Sheaf Street down here who've got that outside inside bit. Again, it's just about plugging it in. West Indian was a great thing to do because I wanted to bring them the mountain to Muhammad. Again, one of the stories that I've got from Lee Wright is, and it's all about integration. I want the parties to feel integrated because I'm integrated. I'm mixed, you know. I want those. That's what I like. I like hybrids. And so I remember being in one of my parties about 8 years ago with Lee Wright, and I said, "Look, Lee, what is this? You know, it's anything funny here?" He says, "What?" I says, "We're the only two black people in the party." And don't get me wrong, I love all the white people. I love everybody. But I want everybody, you know? And so, like I said, I think what had happened with Afroco, originally we did have a lot of mixed people. But I think the more houseier it got with some of the bookings, it only takes 2 or 3 and it put off the black people. And so part of doing it at West Indian Centre was to take everybody, because I loved it seeing all these people that we're talking about, that we all mingle around with the same faces. I loved seeing them in my back garden. It was beautiful. I love seeing them mixing with my local friends. Beautiful. I love seeing the local people going, oh, yeah, we love this. This is great. So hopefully in October, we'll bring a few more blacky faces to town.
Nothing like being politically correct.
I don't care about PC. You can cancel me. I don't give a damn.
Well, I could make jokes till the cows came home, but I should do
an explicit. We do a late night version. Like I tell my kids at home, listen, we're at home. We say what we want at home.
You should hear some of the conversations we have, but we won't go there. We won't go there. Okay, so listen, bud, we've been chatting for quite a while. I think we've covered the roots, your story. I will, again, every time I chat to people, I always say to them, I'd like to bring you back on and have you on a panel with a few more people, because there's still so many different scenarios, little situations that you would have come across. Again, if Lee would have been here tonight, we would have been bouncing off one another with the stories and the memories. I think it's definitely an inspirational story. It's educational, informative, the story that you've shared with us, without a shadow of a doubt. And I want to wish you all the best with the parties and, of course, with the continued success with the releases. Is there anything that you thought we would have covered that we may have skipped over, or that's going to come in an hour's time where you're going to be cursing? You're going to go, shit, I didn't talk about this, that, the other.
I won't be cursing. Come to the parties. Come to For the People parties. That's all. I'm going to promote them. That's it. Come to the parties. They're just really nice. No one makes any money, but we have a really good time.
There you go. There you go. Help a man out. On Facebook, Malcolm WeLove. A lot of people will be checking out the recording. Malcolm, I will say goodbye and thank you, and then I'll say a few words to these people. Cheers, brother. I enjoyed that.
Thanks, Andy. All the best, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Bye, mate. Bye.
So there you go. Away goes Malcolm. Always nice to sit and listen. I feel he probably raced through his story a little bit there. It's easily done. There's a hell of a lot more to it. I was talking to Matt Annis a couple of weeks ago. You may or may not have heard me draw reference to his book, where I read about the early story of Leeds sound systems, house music culture, and so on. That book is called Join the Future. It's by Matt Annis. I would show it to you, but I've just given it to my friend to read. Getting a lot of comments, people saying they enjoyed that, and a lot of praise for Malcolm. Thank you very much. Whilst I talk about books and authors, as you can see on the screen here, next week, next Tuesday, I'm really, really looking forward to talking to this gentleman. Harold Heath is his name, and he is the author of this book here. It is called Long Relationships. It says, my incredible journey from unknown DJ to small-time DJ. Now, this book is incredible. It is absolutely hysterical. And Harold is going to be talking to me next week. We'll be talking about his production career, which is how I got to meet him. He'll be telling us about his early days as a DJ, and he'll also be shedding some light on his wonderful writing skills. That is definitely something that I urge you to check out next week. Paul Marshall saying wicked book. Lee Willow saying brilliant book. Isn't it just laugh out loud moments all the way through? I don't expect people to buy it and read it before next Tuesday, but I definitely do urge you to get it, and I recommend you come and check it out. So thank you for being here, folks. I truly appreciate it. If you've made it to the end, I will do a very quick recap On the off chance you're catching this for the first time after picking us up, a link from somewhere, every Tuesday night, inspire and be inspired. I'm coming live from my house here in Spain. I have untold other interviews that I've conducted over the last 12 to 14 months, a lot of music related talks, also a lot of motivational talks, also things to do with health, love, relationships, so many. Do check them out on my YouTube page, youtube.com/DJ Andy Ward. I also send out an audio podcast where you can subscribe and check that out. All the information is at djandyward.net. Thank you, Mickey, to still see you here. It's nice to know that people do join us live. It's always difficult to try and get into people's timelines when we are live on Facebook, but we do get a hell of a lot of people coming and checking out the recording. So again, I just say thank you very much. I am supported by my Axis crew, a merry band of men and women who support me on a monthly basis, and some of their logos are displaying on the screen now. Thank you very much. And I will end off by giving a brief mention to a good friend who I lost last Tuesday, Mr. Greg Cross. I just wanted to mention him on tonight's stream. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you being here. I'll see you soon.